My guest on the 2-Minute Timeout has been an annual guest since 2005. Joins me once again, Neil Walker. Thanks for taking the time. And anything happened in your life since we last spoke, back in spring training?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously things have changed a lot here, especially over the last month. I'm obviously no longer donning the black and gold in Pittsburgh. But we had a wonderful season individually and as a team in Pittsburgh this 2015 season, and but unfortunately we had to the team moved me into the orange and blue for this 2016 season.
You certainly heard the talk about a possible trade during the previous season, and what was the feeling like then when it was brought up to you, and then eventually when it happened, the reality hit? Explain that when people brought it up and then when it happened.
Yeah, I think we just couldn't find any common ground between the player and the front office, and tried to work through some things a few years ago, and we weren't able to do that. And it just seemed that the closer I got to free agency, that the tougher it was going to be for both sides to find a happy agreement on years and dollars. And so as it got closer, I just had a feeling that the scenario was going to happen, and I was going to be traded at some point, or hopefully get to that last year, get to free agency as a Pirate, and possibly maybe something broke through with the team. But like I said, that didn't happen, and that's kind of the nature of the beast. And when you're talking about baseball,
when you finally got that phone call, you were traded. Was it like a punch in the stomach?
No, not really. I mean, like I said, it had been talked about for quite some time, and I didn't anticipate it. You never really, I guess you're never really prepared for a trade or for things to change in your professional life, but I knew that it was coming at some point. But when my agent called me before the trade happened and said this is a possibility, the shock value was pretty high. But a punch in the gut, I don't think so. I think that this is a business decision on their end, and like I said, I appreciated everything all the opportunities that I was given in Pittsburgh, but it was just unfortunate that we weren't able to come to some common ground.
You once told me you realized baseball was a business when you were in the minors and guys were there one day, gone the next. There was turnover from year to year. When you were younger, a couple years ago, when we were in the minors, did you start thinking about that, how that would be if you were traded from the organization?
I think you're numb to it as a player. I think when you're involved in it so closely and on a daily basis, and you're kind of removed from the aura of the glitz and glamour of the outside perception of what it would be like to, number one, play in the major leagues, and number two, play in for your hometown team. I think those things are going to hit me more so when I get down to spring training or opening day comes around with New York, and I'm in a different uniform and I'm looking around, and it's not the city of Pittsburgh, or it's not I'm not wearing the Pirates black and gold, and but now it's still kind of fresh, it's still kind of strange, and I'm just kind of trying to find my way through the whole scenario of figuring out where to stay in spring training and during the season, and travel schedules and all those sorts of things. So I think when you're as a player, when you're that close to the situation, you don't realize what it's going to be like to be somewhere else or to do something different. And I think that's just kind of how baseball players are manufactured per se, to go day to day and to be kind of numb to a lot of different situations.
When you eventually traveled to New York, you met some new people. When you'd wake up in the morning, did you think, wait a minute, where am I? Am I dreaming this happened?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I think I never really envisioned playing in New York. I think, I've always loved the New York Mets organization. I've always thought that they were a first-class organization. So from that standpoint, it was really cool to kind of see that they wanted me as much as they did to trade for me. So, and obviously the talent level there right now is very, very high, and I'm really excited to be a part of it and help this team get back to the World Series and make a playoff run. So all those things are at the end of the day, when I look back at the trade and what could have happened, I feel very fortunate that I'm going to a team like New York.
You were known as a Pittsburgh kid, and I've read some descriptions, and this is rather amusing, that some described you as an aging second baseman, and that's sort of interesting or amusing because baseball does view 30-year-olds as the beginning of older athletes.
Yeah, I think if you're not 22, 23, 24, and having a significant impact at the major league level, you're considered an aging anything. So, yeah, that's not terribly surprising to hear me being described as that.
The trade aside, what's the off season like for you? With it starting in November and then until you report to spring training, working out, hitting, throwing, just letting your body recuperate. So, explain what you do almost on a regular basis.
Well, I think the first 3 or 4 or 5 weeks, however your body's feeling after the season, you just kind of catch your breath and let your body recover and do whatever you want to do. Play golf, travel a little bit with your family, do a little bit or do a lot. We're usually somewhere in between. We usually take a trip here and there, and I like playing golf, and we like going to see the Steelers play and the Penguins play. So a lot of different activities that we like to do. And then come November, I'll get back into the weightlifting and the running and the conditioning. And then come December, I'll start to get back into the hitting and throwing and baseball portion of everything. And then January and obviously early February, you're pretty much in as close to high gear as you can to prepare for spring training and prepare for the season.
You decided to wear number 20 to honor your father who pitched in the majors. And how important has family been for the Walkers?
Well, it's been huge. And, to have the support system that I've had, I feel very fortunate. Obviously my dad and my uncle have played at the major league level. Both my brothers played. One brother played in college and the other played professionally for quite some time. And my brother-in-law is still playing at the major league level. So we share a lot of stories and a lot of of our experiences in the major leagues and in playing baseball and the ups and downs of it. But at the end of the day, when you have that support system and you know that you can talk to somebody that's been through it, that's really invaluable. But people from just my mom being able to cook home cooked meals for me and my wife being with me wherever I am and traveling with me and things like that, it is invaluable. And those are things that during the season you miss a lot when you're on 10-day road trips and you don't see them for quite some time. And you try to enjoy the off season, especially as much as you can with your family, because once the ball starts rolling in spring training, it doesn't stop for a good 6-7 months.
Some final moments with Mets second baseman Neil Walker. Major League Baseball is looking at the takeout slide at second base, and what are your thoughts on a possible change in that rule?
Well, I think anytime you're looking to make a rule change on keeping players healthier, and it doesn't change the integrity of the game, it's a very interesting issue. And, I've never had, knock on wood, too many issues around the bag at second base. And I've always felt like I was taught at an early time when I was learning second base how to use the bag in the way that keeps you out of harm's way for the most part. So, from a personal standpoint, I don't have a preference either way if they do change or if they keep it status quo, but you do see those occasional issues like we had in Pittsburgh with Jung Ho this past year that you lose one of your best players for the entire rest of the season, and those are situations that are always going to be come to the forefront when the off season rolls around or when a new bargaining agreement's coming around. I'll be interested to see which way it goes. Like I said, any way to make the game safer, I think is and to keep players in the field and to keep the best players from being in the training room or being on the DL is only good it makes it better for the game too.
Finally, as you look back on your years as a professional baseball player, and what have you learned about the game? And one of the quotes I saw is that the game doesn't adapt to you, you adapt to the game. So you look back as a high school kid who was drafted. How do you see the game differently and see yourself differently?
Well, I think as you get older and you're working your way through the minor leagues and you're in the major leagues and you're trying to kind of solidify yourself, you're in kind of somewhat of a survival mode. And then if you're fortunate enough to settle in and have a good career and be 25 to 30 and be on a good team and produce and, possibly be lucky enough to make the playoffs or make a push at the World Series, you start to view baseball in a different way. And the difference at the major league level is so minuscule, and you have so many guys that are so talented. It's the guys that can separate, that can adapt on a daily basis, that can adapt and make adjustments on the fly. And, you stop worrying about what you can't do, and you start worrying about focusing on the things that you're good at and focusing on how to make yourself better and scouting your opponents, really just worrying about the pure winning aspect of the daily game of baseball. And that's when it gets really fun, when you stop worrying about what your numbers look like and start focusing on how can I help my team win. That's it. And if you take it 0 for 4, but your team wins, you're happy. And if you take a 4 for 4 and you lose, you feel a little unsatisfied. Those are things that I've learned, I think, over the course of my career, my 7 years in the big leagues, and then another 6 years in the minor leagues. It's been a long road. Certainly, I wouldn't change a day of it.
Well, Neil, thanks for joining me once again. I was sort of surprised. You texted me, said you still want to speak with me since I'm a Met, and I thought about it, and yeah, I guess so. Yeah, sure, we'll do that.
Yeah, I'm glad to see you still faithful. I always appreciate your time.
Well, you told me in 2005 when I met you, I said, would you come on and do some interviews every year? And I said, please don't big time me. You promised me